And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to another Bitovi front-end training. It's been a while. This time, we are going to be building a very small, progressively loaded JavaScript and jQuery application. Uses Bootstrap, uses a few other things, but it's really to show how to start a StealJS application from scratch. Joining me are two Done.js contributors and StealJS contributors. Matthew and Julian, say hello.
Hello. How's it going? Yeah, like the three people that contributed
right?
the most.
From Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I'm gonna run through it. You guys provide the color commentary or ask questions that you think the audience might want to be asking. So let's get started with what we're going to build. So we are going to build, and there's right now you can actually find this in StealJS's GitHub wiki, just basically every step-by-step that we're doing without much explanation. This is it links to a video that shows the example app. I'm kind of showing a video in a video right now, but basically you can click on a Repos link, shows you a list of your repositories. Click a puppies link, and it shows you a list of your puppies loaded from Flickr. And you can hit the back button, forward button, and it's going to do the whole progressively load. It's going to load the puppies code only when the person's looking at puppies, and the repos code only when someone's looking at the repos.
Cool.
So, yeah, it's everything you've always wanted in a mini application. So I'm really going to walk through this. This is actually part of a Done.js community training. So this presentation is kind of combined with this step-by-step, but we're not going to walk through all of this presentation because it'll just take too long. This whole guide is kind of expected to take 4 to 5 hours. We don't have that kind of time, but if you want to get into Steel, I'll put the link to this presentation, and this is a good thing to go through, or sign up for your local Done.js meetup, and eventually we will hopefully have this by you.
We have Done.js training coming up in Raleigh at the end of the month, or at the end of the next month, July. So
yeah. Sign up now while space lasts. Okay, so let's get started. So I've already installed the prerequisites for Steel on this computer, which is a Mac, so you only have to install just Node. If you're on a Windows machine and you want live reload to work, which I'm not showing in this presentation, or hot module swapping, then you have to install some other prerequisites. Those are all listed on Steel's webpage, but they are, in short, Chocolatey, Python, the Windows SDK, and Visual Studio. Kind of sucks if you're a Windows user. We're going to see what we can do about that. But thankfully, I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to make this big so everybody can see it. And I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to call that project Project My Hub. I'm going to make a My Hub. And I'm going to cd into it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this as a NPM project. So I'm going to npm init. And normally you'd want to fill out some of the information here. Like I typically don't start as the 1.0 version. I start as 0.0.1. But for now, and I add a description and things like that. For now, I'm just hitting enter on everything. So what that's going to do, I'm going to open my project folder, is this, now I've got that My Hub folder, and npm init essentially filled out a package.json. This is what Node uses to kind of configure a package, to let it know what its name is, its version, what the main entry point of the application is. We're going to come back to this in a moment. First, what I want to do is just get some, I'm creating a new application. what's the first thing I want to see? Well, I just want to be able to open a browser to some web page and see, hello world or something like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a myhub.html. And actually, I'm going to make my fonts a little bit bigger so everybody can see what's going on. So I created this myhub.html. And in it, I'm just going to put hello world HTML to make sure we can kind of get something going here. And then I'm going in another terminal, in this one. This is going to be small, but I don't want to make the font bigger for just this. I'm going to install HTTP server with npm. So we're going to npm install HTTP server. And I'm going to install that globally. And this just installs a little file server that's really easy to use. So easy, I just write HTTP server. I'm going to cd into my hub project and run HTTP server. And that's going to give me some a URL back where it's hosting the project. Let me do it in here.
We don't see your browser.
I know, I'm bringing it over.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to do it here. And we get hello world. Yay! So now at least we have some basic playground to play in. By the way, you'll notice if you just go straight to the root, it's nice. It shows you what's in that folder, so you can kind of navigate that way. Okay, so now we have the basics of a project, an npm project set up. The next thing I need to do is I need to install the things that we're going to use immediately. So we're going to install Steel, which is, so StealJS is really two parts. The first part is the Steel project, which I'm going to install first. So this uses npm to install the client module loader, that part of Steel. So Steel's two parts. There's a Steel part, which is the client module loader, and there's Steel Tools, which is the build system. So I installed the client part, and I'm doing -- save, so it's going to be a dev dependency. Although it probably actually could be a, I mean, in some ways it depends how you architect things. What you consider dev and not dev. If you're making a whole build and that's what you're publishing, then maybe Steel doesn't need to be. It could be a dev dependency as well. But for now, we're going to making it a normal dependency of our project. Steel Tools, we're going to install as a dev dependency. This will take a little bit longer. While that goes, I just want to show what installing Steel did. It added to our package.json this dependencies property to our JSON, and then it listed the current version of Steel. So this will install any new version of Steel. That's what this little caret means. Any new version of Steel that is basically, would it install a 1.0? I don't think it installed 1.0, but it'll install a 999.99.
No, I don't think it will do that either.
It installs
only installs 16. Yeah, once you get to 1.0, it will do that.
So it's different.
Before 1.0, yeah, it kind of treats 16 as being the major.
Oh, it's leftmost non-zero digit. Right?
Yeah. I think it's. Yeah. Luckily, 1.0 is coming very, very soon, so that won't be an issue anymore.
Yeah, and then it did the same kind of thing for Steel DevTools. So it installed the latest version of Steel Tools. And it also created this node modules folder. This is where node or npm installs all of your dependencies and your dependencies in this very long flat list now, which nobody really likes, but we all understand why they did it. They did it for Windows. So you can see in here, if I scroll down long enough, and my eyes are sharp enough, I can find Steel Tools and Steel. Okay, so now that I've got Steel and Steel Tools, I can, oh, there's actually one more thing I want to install. I want to install jQuery just because we're going to use that for some basic DOM stuff. So I'm going to run npm install jQuery and save that as a normal dependency. Okay. So now that I have that, I want to create some code. I want to start writing code. So I'm going to write my first module, and I just want this module to say something like goodbye script tags, because really script tags are terrible. If you look at the presentation, you'll see my thoughts on using script tags to load your JavaScript code. Instead, I like using modules. So I'm going to create a myhub.js as the first module for this application. And I'm going to use ES modules, which is like ECMAScript modules. ECMAScript modules are just a standard way of, really what modules have are dependencies and exports. Modules depend on other modules, and they export some type of, JavaScript construct, objects, variables, functions, things like that. So what I want to do is I want to write something like, I want to add to the body. I want to change the body so it says h1 goodbye script tags. It's going to replace that hello world and say goodbye script tags. Now, because we're using a module, everything that this module uses really should be imported. So because it's using jQuery, I want to import jQuery. I'm going to import $ from jQuery. Okay. And Steel is going to be able to figure out how to load when it loads this file, first load jQuery, execute jQuery, and then make this $jQuery so that this can run. But first, we can't just point, unfortunately, our page at myhub.js as a script tag or something like that. Instead, what we need to do is load StealJS, and then StealJS will load myhub.js. So I'm going to add a script tag to my page that loads StealJS inside the node modules folder. So the StealJS file inside StealJS is what we're loading. And I'll add my script tag. So now, if I do this, there's going to be a slight problem when I load my page up. Always open developer tools, and it's a good idea when you're using Steel, by the way, to check this one setting in your dev tools. There is a where is it? Oh, there's this setting right here.
I believe the one you're looking for is on the network. Oh,
here it is. Yeah. Disable cache while DevTools is open. So that's a good one to cache, because sometimes Chrome, when it's used with Steel, will too aggressively cache the requests that Steel is making. We don't want that to happen while we're developing, so this is a good idea here to keep that checked. And in general, always good to have your console open to find errors. So now if I refresh this page, we say, hey, we loaded Steel. Yeah, oh no, what's going on? Index.
Where did index.js come from, is the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what Steel does by default is it loads this package.json. And it uses that to inform what is the main module of this package. And the main module is listed right now is index.js. That's why it's trying to load index.js instead of myhub.js. So we'll change this to myhub.js. And then we refresh, and it says, oh, crazy. It says goodbye script tags.
Maybe
we see hello world for a moment, and then it goes
maybe
away.
Show the network tab. It's I think it's kind of interesting to see what's actually happening. Yeah.
So What you want to go through? What is happening?
Oh, sorry, I was drinking water. Yeah, I can do that. So Steel loads, because we have, it's in the script tag. So Steel loads, it executes. It sees that it's running inside of node modules. And because of that, it's like, hey, we're using node modules, so let's load up the package JSON. To do that, it loads all these npm dependencies, and these are all modules that know about how package JSON works, basically, and knows how to configure Steel to work with the package JSON. Once it's done that, it loads the package JSONs, which are your dependencies. So it's going to load your package JSON. And I believe it's going to load the JQuery package JSON because you're using JQuery. Yeah, and then it will load my hub once it's loaded JQuery.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes a request for my hub, sees that it depends on JQuery, and then makes the JQuery.
Yeah, and also loads tracer. It loads jQuery. It sees that this is ES. This is ES syntax, so it uses tracer to transpile it. Then finds that jQuery. Oh, hey, wait, we need jQuery. Then loads jQuery and then executes this code.
Which, if you hover over that, jQuery is coming from inside of node modules, jQuery, jQuery.js, I believe.
Yep.
And it knows that because
jQuery.js. Yeah.
Right. And it knows that because jQuery is in your package.json.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the cool thing, the real benefit about Steel, which I guess I will touch upon right now, my reasons to use Steel. Well, the first reason why to use Steel, because it's a module loader, never use a script tag. They're disgusting. But why use StealJS and not Webpack, JSPM, Browserify, Require.js, etc.? The reason why we at Bitovi develop and maintain StealJS is largely because of modlets, which we'll get into. It's our way of organizing projects so that each module can have its own test page, its own demo page, and we can have a lot of different pages that just show off a little piece of the application. This is really important for how we develop. No other, except for Require.js, no other popular like Webpack, JSPM, Browserify, they don't easily support that because you have to have a build for every single page that you want to load. Require.js and StealJS work in the browser, so they don't need a build for every single page. But where Require.js doesn't support every single format, can't easily load from NPM, and I don't think does the high-performance build that Steel does, that's why this is kind of our bread and butter. We want to support all of these things. And this one makes us kind of different from the modern other loaders. Hopefully by the end of this, because we'll be creating modules or modlets, that how nice they are and how useful makes it clear why we spend all this time supporting Steel.
Yeah, I'd say like more generally, just like Steel makes creating HTML files cheap. It makes it very easy to create as many HTML files as you need to test all the different things, to create demos for all the different things. It just makes it very easy to isolate different parts of your code, which is awesome.
Which is the whole point behind modules anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's back on track here. Now, I think it was a good deviation. Now we have this goodbye script tags, and what I want to do is start adding styles to this. So I'm going to create we could add a normal CSS file, but Steel comes with less, so I'm just going to jump right to using less because it's cool that way. I'm going to make a myHub less file, and I'm going to change the body, H1 in the body, or I'm going to change the H1. I'm doing it this way because later we're going to add Bootstrap, and Bootstrap, if I just put H1, would overwrite this H1. So I need that body there to make it a little more important. I'm going to make the color some kind of grayish blue. Now, to use a style, well, it works pretty similar to importing jQuery. Styles, though, similar to kind of this module, styles are just purely side effectual. They don't actually return you anything. They don't give you a value. So you just, because we're kind of depending on the style side effects, we don't import anything. We just say import the module. So I'm just going to import the myhub.less. And with that, did I save it? I think so. Yay, we get a nice kind of grayish blue color. So that's a nice thing about Steel, is that it kind of works out of the box with styles and less, so you can have modules that have their own styles. Now, one thing I'd like to point out, but I don't want to go too much in detail, you can find more information about this on Steel's website or in the presentation, which is why we write this .. The long answer, I think the easiest way to think about it is if you just wrote myhub.less, it's possible that there's a package called myhub.less and that there could be conflicts. So typically speaking, when you're within a package, it's good to either use the same package name, so I could use myhub/less, like this, or you can be relative to the current file. You shouldn't just write out the path of your file kind of rooted in your current package. It will find this, but potential conflicts can arise. So it's better to write it like this or like this. And then Matthew, I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about in 1.0?
Yeah, tilde. Julian wrote that feature. You can do the tilde.
Ooh, maybe Julian wants to talk about it. So what does tilde do, Julian?
So yeah, tilde is an operator that replaces the tilde operator with the package name. So if you want to change your package name while you are writing this app, you can write a tilde and didn't have to rewrite all your package names in a JavaScript files. So it's an easy way to point through the package name, and yeah, you can nest that tilde operator with folders behind that.
Yeah, it's basically a shortcut for just writing myhub.
Yeah.
Boom, and it's super. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's super useful if you want to, oh, I don't want it called myhub anymore. I want it called my-hub. You don't have to go a million places and change that. It's really convenient.
Or sometimes people write super long names, and you don't want to write that either.
Yeah, that's also a good point. Okay, cool. So we've loaded that. Now I want to add Bootstrap to this application just to show that it's kind of possible. I'm going to npm install Bootstrap. Save that as a dependency. Now, one, I think, useful thing is you can install a lot from npm, right? There's a septillion or so different packages. A Googleplex of packages. Who knows? It's a really big number, a lot of packages. Now, not all of them are nicely configured to, load. It'd be really nice to just be able to write import Bootstrap and then get its styles and its JavaScript or whatever. It's not configured to do that, and there's kind of different ways you can load what's inside Bootstrap. The first way, which is kind of the easiest way, is just look inside Bootstrap, find it in here, Bootstrap, and then you can go hunting for where its CSS might be. So I might look in here and say, oh, there's this dist folder, there's a CSS, and I see Bootstrap CSS, so I'm going to import Bootstrap dist css bootstrap.css. That's one way of doing it. One thing is I personally never load the minified ones. I just don't see a point. I always like to see everything. Steel's build system will minify it for you, so there's no real good reason to ever load like the minified distributable, as far as I know. So now we've added Bootstrap, but Bootstrap needs, if you're familiar with Bootstrap, it needs some kind of meta information so that it works responsively the right way in your HTML. We could get really crazy and make another Bootstrap module that like side effectually changes the page whenever Bootstrap is loaded, but I'm not going to go that far. Instead, I'm just going to do what Bootstrap wants, kind of in the HTML pages, and I'm going to add these meta tags to the page. So really, I think the important one is this viewport one that makes it so like pinch to zoom doesn't work, I think, right? Does something like that.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to do is actually use, so I've changed the HTML. I actually want to use Bootstrap. So I'm going to change, instead of this, which actually doesn't use Bootstrap, I'm going to put this in a container so we can kind of see it responsively move around. So I'm going to make a div with class container, and I'll end it so we can see. Okay. And with that, so now we have a little responsive site. You can see how like it kind of, at a certain point, it starts, the goodbye starts moving around and then stays fixed to the left. That's Bootstrap doing that. So now we've set up a little mini responsive site. Hooray for us. So now that we've set this up, what I want to start doing is building the different modules this app is going to use. I want to start building the Repos module, and I want to start building the puppies module. I'm going to start with the Repos. And this is where modlets come into being. Modlets are when you organize your module, instead of just creating like a Repos JS here and writing repos and a puppies, like I can't, then it's very difficult and annoying if you have a lot of modules to have a test page for this, it's tests, a demo page so I can see repos just working on its own. This is a big part of Bitovi, just kind of how we write things, and I think it serves us super well over the last decade. What we do is we create a folder for every one of our modules. So I'm going to create a repos folder, and within there I'm going to put eventually the repos module. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The first thing I like to do when I'm designing a module, right? Because modules will export some function or some API. I want to think about how is someone going to use that, right? It's kind of documentation-driven design or test-driven design. I just first think about like, okay, someone's going to consume this. What's the bare minimum they need to do to get this thing on the page so they could actually see it happening? So that's what our demo pages are for. So I'm going to create a repos.html. And I'm going to kind of steal some of this myhub.html, just because I'm going to make this also use Bootstrap. And I'm going to get rid of this hello world, and I'm going to make sure I'm pointing at the right path to steal. So I got to go up one folder to get to the node modules. And now this is where I'm going to sit down hard and start thinking. What does someone need to do to use this module? Well, it's a module, so they'd have to import it.
So maybe they'd write import repos, some repos function from, and then maybe they write myhub repos.
You wanna set your main, don't you? So it doesn't load the main.
So yes, thank you. So by default, Steel, like we already saw in the main HTML, will load the main module. But we can trick it to make a little playground for us by writing main as empty. And then we can have some code in here. It'll basically run this as kind of an anonymous module. Right? So we'll say like, okay, I'm gonna load this. Now we can't unfortunately do dot like that, which would be really cool because it's an anonymous module. It doesn't really know where it is in the world. Although maybe perhaps well, there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't know that. That's why you kind of have to give the fully qualified module name, or like very close to that. That's why you have to write myhub repos, because it doesn't really know where it's starting from, this anonymous module. So here I want a repos function, and maybe just for the most simple API possible, I just want to be able to write, hey, repos, I'm going to put you on some element by selector. So maybe I just select some element by ID, and I'll create a div with ID repos. Whoop. So maybe something like this. This is as brainless and a simplistic way to use and consume my module and get it on the page as I can conceive. So I'm satisfied with this. I don't know how you guys happy with this?
Yeah.
Good, because I'd have to change everything, the whole guide. So yeah, I'm happy with this. So the next thing is we gotta then. I've got this demo page. You could, if you were being super hardcore, actually start doing test-driven development of it. We're going to instead build the module and then test it. So here's the repos module, and I'm just going to cut and paste the code and then go through it. Well, I'll start with the basics of what I want. What I want this module to do is export a function. And ES modules can have lots of different exports, but if you want, there's different syntaxes. I could have a module where I could say like import, if JQuery could export a foo, I could import it like this. But if you want a special export, which is the default export, you write your syntax like this. So JQuery can export a default export, and I get it with this syntax, which is the most common, like a very common way that people want to import things. That's like, here's the most important thing that you want to export, what people get, unless you're specifying a kind of a certain named export in your package. So typically speaking, well, I would say very often you're exporting the default export. So I'm going to export the default export, and in this case, I want it to be a function that takes a selector. So now my repos.html would actually be getting a function because it's using the kind of it's importing the default export from myhub. If I changed it to this, then I would have to change this to default to, I could do it a few different ways. I could do function repos. It would take the name that way. And I think you can also do it, correct me if I'm wrong, I could do var equals that, right?
Maybe. I don't. You might not need the equal. I'm not really up to date on my
Pretty sure.
It's new stuff. You
So
could do something.
if you need to figure this out, here's the ES6 module syntax, and it has a lot of the different ways of doing it. And I know you can do var equals something. So I think that does work. But we want to be exporting the default export. So I want that repos. So I'm going to use Bootstrap and JQuery in this module. So I'm going to import them. And then I'm just going to write out the code and explain what it does. So what it's doing is it's taking that selector, getting that element, and it's going to change its inner HTML to, say, loading. Then it's going to make let me make this a little bit smaller, more that fits on the page. You can probably put a space here so we can see all of it. Then I'm making a JSON-P request to GitHub's API for my repositories. You can change this to your name. Julian, what's your P? We can do yours. What's your username? It's PYROX or something like. Huh?
Yeah, I think it's Pyro.
No, but you got a capital in there, don't you?
Yeah, he's like. I'll stick with mine. I'll stick with mine for this. So I'm making a request to mine and a JSON-P, and this is going to give me back some data of my GitHub repositories. I'm using the template, what are they called, template expressions? I can't remember what the official term is. The kind of new string syntax that allows you to do kind of micro templates in it. So I'm generating a definition list and a list of terms and definitions for the URL and the description of each repository. So I'm just making some HTML and then dumping that, replacing the loading with essentially this HTML. So with that, I should be able to go to my demo page. So I can navigate like this nicely. I can go to repos, repos.html, and then you get this cool responsive list of your repositories. Cool. All right. So the nice thing about this is a lot of times our modules are not as simple as this. You can play with it. You can make sure it's working outside of the rest of the application, which is really handy if you've got to go through a million login steps to get to a certain spot in the app, and then you do something that takes you somewhere else where, I just want to work on this one widget. You've got this place to do it. Okay, so now we're going to test this. So the next thing is our modlets. They have a demo page, they have the module, and then they have a test page. So this is going to be repos test.html. And the test page is going to load I'm going to get to it in one moment. I'm going to create it right now, a test module. Repos test.js. So I've got my test page that I need to load my test module. The test page is going to load Steel. Node modules.
So why have a test page just for repos? Why have a specific page just for that?
It's because if you have a really large application of 100 modules, the amount, you could have one test page that just loads every single module and runs them all. But loading all of those modules can still take a long time. And even if it's the first time, I found this bug, you have to you have to find that point where it broke and click on it, stuff like that. It can take a little bit.
Yeah.
It's very nice, especially, I do this all the time. CanJS is built this way, and a lot of our code is built this way. It's super nice just to be able to go to that one folder, just open up that one test page, and 30 tests run instead of 3,000.
Yeah, I think it's also nice because, especially if you're doing, demo-driven development, you might be making large changes to your code, and it's nice to be able to pop open the the test page every now and then and see if everything's still working or not.
That's true. Sometimes tests are layered, like one test will depend on the successful passing of your test, and you'll just see like you've just broken 500 different tests. That can be a little distracting, where you can be inside your one little area, get that working, then pull back and see what else is breaking. It's quite handy. So you need to create a script tag, and I'm going to create a little bit more for this page just to say what it is. I'm going to give it a title. And you could do that. I'm not creating a head or HTML or body because it really just doesn't matter for QUnit tests by and large. So I created a title that QUnit will load, which we are going to load QUnit in a moment. And then QUnit also likes a little test area called QUnit fixture that it kind of sets empty after every single test runs. It clears that out, which is pretty handy. So this is what the HTML of our, tends to look like for our test pages. I think Done.js generates something pretty similar to this. So now I want to start writing my test page, but I want QUnit. So I want to be able to write import QUnit from ideally QUnit, but you can't use QUnit. Well, you can use QUnit directly, but it's not super convenient because QUnit needs to kind of know when to run all of its tests, and by default, it just kind of runs them right away. We made a special StealQUnit that makes sure every single module has loaded before starting to run all of the tests. So we're going to use that version, just this slightly wrapped version of QUnit, which we've published called StealQUnit. Pretty much does all the exact same stuff. So that's what we're going to install. We'll just save this as a dev dependency. So with that, I want to test my Repos module. So I'm going to import. Oh, did I forget something? I forgot something. I just realized. I forgot to tell, again, Steel should not be loading my hub.js. We want its main entry point, the module it loads, to be this Repos Test module here. So I'm going to point main to my hub Repos test. Okay. So my Repos test, I want that to be importing the Repos modules. Here we can use, because really it's your entry points that always need to be using the full name. So in this case, this is the entry point. So once you're in this module, it kind of knows where it is. So you can just load repos like this, which is convenient. And now we want to test it. So I'm going to write out the test and then go through it, just so we can save a little time, because I'd like to get this session about an hour long. So what this does is, oh, I just duplicated myself here a little bit, is it says, hey, this is the module that we're testing, my hub repos. We haven't talked about it yet, but as a shorthand, we're actually testing the repos module. But whenever you have a module that's named that way with Steel, you can just, because that's like a big convention that we follow, like in the repos page, you can just let the trailing slash, and it knows to fill in repos for you. So you can just leave things like that. So that's why it's this shorthand name here. But all this is doing is it's getting that fixture element we want to add the repos to, calling repos, making sure that immediately after it says loading. And then what we're going to do is poll, basically every 100 milliseconds, we're going to check until the content of the fixture element has a definition list element inside of it. And once it does, we're going to say, okay, sure, this test is passed. So with that, I can open up the test page. And all the tests pass. Or I guess our one test passes. So real quick recap of what we did. Get this test page running. We created a test page that pointed at our test module. And we loaded JQuery and our module, and then basically wrote a test for it. Now, this test is terrible. This isn't a good test. What don't we like about this?
Well, the fact that it uses a set interval.
Yes, that's a big problem. Another issue that we actually had in the training was that we started getting rate limited by GitHub. So the test would actually never pass because it's making this request to the API. So we're not doing an integration test. We're trying to make a unit test here, but we're counting on GitHub returning some data successfully. That's not a great unit test. It's an all right integration test, but a pretty
depending on
terrible
external service.
Yeah. And because of that, that's also why we have to do the set interval, because we kind of don't have a good way, unless we like set up mutation observers or something even weirder, to know when this element changes again to have the definition list. And we can't actually say, oh, should there be the DTs and other DDs or whatever inside of this, and like what should they look like? Because we don't actually know. I might go change my list of repositories, and then there'd be a new one. So we don't have a lot of control around this unit test. So instead, what I want to do is use dependency injection to test this. So I'm gonna paste out what that looks like, and then we're gonna talk about it. So. But dependency injection, well, before I paste it, let me talk about what dependency injection means. What I want to do is make it so when Repos tries to call $Ajax, I have total control over $Ajax's behavior. And I can mock up what $Ajax does so that I can provide whatever response I want and make sure that this is getting created in the correct way. Dependency injection allows me to inject my own mocked up version of jQuery. And this is something that Steel supports and actually comes with is dependency injection capabilities. The place to start with that is there's this SteelQunit module. This comes with Steel. And this allows you to kind of create a new, you can think of it, library of modules where you can inject your own behaviors and replace other modules with, your own mock-ups of those other modules. So we're going to basically mock up the jQuery module itself. To mock it up, it's actually useful to have jQuery itself because some things like the dollar function, I don't want to mock that up, so I'm just going to make jQuery, my mock dollar just call the real dollar. So there's less work for me to do. I really only want to mock up the Ajax function. So once you have that, I'm going to put in a new test. That's going to mock up jQuery now with dependency injection. So here's my fake version of jQuery. I make a function, and it's just going to use the real jQuery that was loaded up here. It's just using that real jQuery dollar function because I don't want to write all of this and all of the HTML functions and everything else that it's doing. Then I'm going to mock up jQuery's AJAX. And what I'm going to do is take the options that jQuery gave, right, or sent to jQuery, in this case, this object here, and I'm going to call back success with, after a brief timeout with data, and then I'm going to explore what essentially got added to this selector here. So what it got added to jQuery fixture. So here, I get my options, and then, so the AJAX request was made. I'm going to mock up and call options.success with just one piece of data, one repo. And then once success is called, well, we know that repos should be changing the HTML immediately upon that successful response. So I'm just going to check, hey, does QUnit fixture, now it's HTML, does it look like exactly what its HTML should look like? Hey, yes it does. We're done with the test. So this is me setting up my fake jQuery. Now I need to get it in to a Repos module. So what I'm going to do is call that StealClone to clone, this basically means make a new library of modules, but inject jQuery's default export as our fake jQuery. So that's what it is. We're saying the jQuery module that is being imported, its default export should be our fake jQuery. And then what we're going to do is import a new version of Repos, get that module, get the default export for that module, which is our Repos function, and then run it on the fixture element. This Repos module is this Repos function that we kind of loaded this way is actually not the same, function and memory as this Repos. It's a one that's fooled and has a different jQuery in its closure that will run this. So that's, once you have all that, now we've got an awesome test that will not, oh, did I close my whole thing? Hold on 1 second. Now we've got a good test that passes, yay. What's up?
The clone method or a clone function is configured like the Steel we loaded in the test page. So that is all the package JSON metadata or maps are available in the clone because the clone clones the Steel, right?
Yes, it includes all the configuration with it.
Okay.
And this allows you to. There's a way to also swap configuration too. Can I, Matthew? I don't know if there's a way to pass different maps and different settings in with this.
No, but it does give you back a loader, so you could then call.
Then you could call
config.
settings.
Yeah.
Okay. So this returns.
Clone really
as a loader.
A loader, yeah.
And then you can call loader.config to config before you start importing things. Okay, makes sense. At least to us. Okay, so now we just made this sweet module. Let's get it into our main application. So that's pretty easy. We have our My Hub. I want to import our sweet modlet we created, modlet supported module. So I'm going to import repos from repos. And again, you could just write it like this. With slash, that's a nice shortcut. And I'm going to add a little area inside this container for the repos module. So I'm going to add div ID, add a little place for the repos. And then I'm just going to call repos on that once it's in the page. So now we did exactly what Bitovi's process is, made a little module, got it tested, got a demo page, and then once it's all ready, we can integrate it back into the main site. So I can go back to My Hub now. And yay, I see a list of repos on the home page. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing with another module, and we're going to use CommonJS. And we're going to use justified gallery, and this is going to just let us
Justified gallery?
Justified gallery. That's what we're going to use. We're going to use this sweet little widget that this guy created, which I hope. I realized I should have, all the kind of widgets that I've ever created should have been just something for Justin. I missed my opportunity, my naming convention opportunity. This guy is Miro. He should be named Justin, in my opinion, to earn this this name. Anyways, this is a really nice widget. Works really good, but it doesn't. It's designed to be loaded with a script tag. So we're gonna kind of learn two things. We're gonna learn how to deal with that through configuration, and also we're gonna see CommonJS modules in use instead of ES modules. So I'm gonna get the party started, install that justified gallery, and start kind of setting up the modlet and everything. So I'm gonna npm install justified gallery. And while that's going, I'm gonna create the puppies, because that's gonna be our modlet, the puppies modlet and module. And I'm gonna create the puppies.html. I'm going to create the puppies voucher file. We're not going to create tests for this, even though we should. Just there's no time for that right now, and you know how to do it from before. So again, I'm going to create a demo page. I'm just going to cut and paste this because it's pretty much the exact same thing there was before. I'm going to have a container for my puppies element, and if I get this puppies, I'm going to require now my puppies element or my puppies module. Instead of importing it, I'm using CommonJS, which is used in Node. I'm going to import that or require it, and then with that function, I'm going to call #puppies, which I don't know if Matthew, you're old enough to remember. #puppies. I tried to make a joke in the training, and everybody was, my sister had a bazillion of these things. I made a joke about them. I was so happy when I was like, #puppies, this is what you're calling. But everybody was either too old or too young to like really remember them in the class.
That was a very brief window of the #puppies thing.
Yeah, I was right. My sister was right smack, being a year younger than me, was right smack in it. Anyways, so we're going to say add puppies to the puppies element. Now, what we want to be able to do in puppies.js is require justified gallery. And then we're going to export some function. And this is what it looks like in CommonJS. It takes a selector. Now, the problem, again, just like Bootstrap isn't exactly configured to load, justified gallery is like even worse. So if I open up the puppies HTML, let me refresh. There it is. Okay. And I look at my dev tools. You'll see there's an error. It's like trying to load justified gallery, knows nothing about it. I think I must have spelled it wrong. If you see this and it's not trying to load in node modules, that means the package.json isn't, I spelled something wrong. Because it should be looking inside node modules, so let me make sure I got my spelling right.
You did save it, didn't you?
Oh, that might have been.
Justified gallery.
Well, let's see if configuration eventually fixes it. Okay, there it goes. It must have been a spelling mistake. So here it's loading. It's trying to load justified gallery index because that's the default module, like JavaScript loading spot in justified gallery. But there's nothing there because justified gallery is really intended to be just loaded with normal script tag. But justified gallery itself depends on jQuery. So we need to configure justified gallery to load its JavaScript, and then we need to make sure its JavaScript loads jQuery. So let's see this. Let's see how to do this. So again, the way that I do this all is I'm going to go hunting for files that I think I need to load. So I'm going to go find justified gallery. This used to be so much easier before NPM3. And I'm going to start looking in here and be like, okay, what
dist is a giveaway.
I could look dist. This actually works with source. I always like if you can get it to work with the source.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Because sometimes actually this might be you never know. This might be formatted. I mean, this might have this might be a module and actually have its dependencies, and then they write out the dist so that it doesn't.
Yeah.
In this case, both are not modules. They're just intended to be loaded as script tags. But here's the JavaScript file, and I've also found its source-less file, which is nice. That way I don't have to use the dist CSS. So I can get closer to the source. So I need to configure Steel so that when it sees justified gallery, it's going to load justified gallery here, source, JS, justified gallery, JS. You do this, the place to do this is in this system config of Steel. And this supports a whole lot of configuration options you can find in the documentation. But what I want to do is map. So when there's a map subconfig inside the system config. And what I want to do is map it so when someone says, hey, get me just gallery, instead load justified gallery /source/JS/ I don't want to keep writing this over and over and over again, especially if I'm going to spell it wrong. Justified gallery. Okay. That's a start. So if I save this, reload puppies. All right, we get it loaded justified gallery JS, but it's complaining that, hey, this needs jQuery. It's actually trying to reference some jQuery variable, but it doesn't exist. So, we need to get jQuery in there. So the way to do this is there's another configuration called meta. And it's just for an individual module, configures kind of meta information about it. So the module that we're configuring is this justified gallery. This is the real module name that's getting loaded. And we want to say that, hey, this isn't a module syntax. This doesn't have a module syntax, which Steel can deal with. Its format is global. That's what you use when it's supposed to be loaded with script tag. We call that the global format because what it's assuming is that the window has all of the things it needs, and it's going to export the things that it does onto the window. In this case, it actually doesn't export onto the window. It exports onto jQuery, but it definitely is looking for window.jQuery.
It assumes that you have a jQuery script tag above this justified gallery script tag.
But that's why it's called global format, because it's exporting onto like the window or global object. So we're going to say, hey, it's global, but what we need is for it to load jQuery. We need to make sure jQuery is loaded before this runs. And then we also need to want to load its less file. as well. Because it's nice if we can just load justified gallery and it'll pull in its less file for us. So I'm going to point at its less file, which is less justified gallery dot less.
Can we
Now,
specify a version of jQuery in depth metadata?
You could, yes.
No. Yeah.
Well, it's a module name, so if you gave it jQuery dollar something else, you would be able to do that.
Cool. So with that, we should be able to see puppies.
jQuery pound and then a number, sorry.
So here now, justified gallery has loaded, means we can use it. So I can start filling out the puppies code. I'm going to just paste it and quickly go over what it does. This is very similar to the Repos code. It's requiring justified gallery, which adds itself to jQuery. And then we're just doing the same thing. We're setting the element to loading. We're making a request to Flickr's API for puppies. And then when we get the response back, we're going to change the HTML of the element to a bunch of links with images inside of them. And then we're going to call the justified gallery plugin on top of that. So with that all ready for us, you see the loading, and then we see a bunch of puppies. Yay! What is that doing in here? That's not a puppy.
It's crazy.
Evil-looking cat. Yeah.
Need some type of module that detects if it's really a puppy or not and filter it based off of that or something.
Yeah. Okay, so now what I want to do is make it so that we can go from the puppy page to the repo page and back and forth. I'm going to do this a little quick because we're running out of time. What I'm going to change is my hub. I'm going to import puppies. My puppies module. And I'm going to change, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the HTML so there's links. So it's pretty much the same. It's going to say goodbye script tags, but there's going to be a link to Repos that when clicked on changes the hash to Repos, and another link that says puppies that changes the hash to puppies. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a little, this is kind of like, this confused people in the training, but this is, I don't know, this is meta programming a little bit with JavaScript. What I'm doing is I'm listing, given a hash, what function should run. So if the hash is repos, then call this function. If the hash is puppies, then call this function. If the hash is empty, call this function that's just going to say welcome home for the home page. So it's just a little mapping of hashes to what should happen. Then I'm going to create an update page function that checks the hash, strips off the pound before the hash. So it's just going to say repos puppy is your be empty, and then look up what function to run and run it on this main element. Finally, I need to listen when hash change happens to recall update page, so it calls the function, which function to call. And then just because we're initializing the application the first time, we need to run it also once initially. So once we have that, I can go to my hub and I should get rid of that hello world here because it's distracting. And I can now click on repos, see a list of repos, and I can click on puppies, see the puppies, and click back, and everything works. So this is great, except it would be terrible in production because there's a lot of requests. We'll see how many requests there are. 27 requests and a lot of megabytes transferred. You don't need a 23 megabyte page for something this simple. So we're going to build it. To build with Steel, it's pretty straightforward. You call Steel tools.
What do you mean when you say build it? What do you mean when you say build it?
So what I mean right now is it's going to go through every single module and combine all of the JavaScript into one file, concatenated and minified, and all of the CSS or less concatenated and minified into one file. And then we're going to load those JavaScript files instead of each module individually. So Steel Tools comes with a nice command line tool. And by the way, if you don't know, npm installs all kind of executables in this bin folder inside node modules. So I can just write Steel Tools. And that's going to open up the package.json, find the main module, and then build out I'll show on the file system. It's going to build out this dist folder with the different bundles for kind of your different entry points into the application. In this case, there's just MyHub as the main entry point. So it's going to build a MyHub.js with everything your application. I shouldn't have loaded that because it'll crash Atom. And it's also going to load MyHub CSS with Bootstrap and presumably also, what's it called? Justified's less minified into CSS. So now we want to load that page. Because it's nice to go back and forth between kind of development and production. Typically in a big app, like if it's running on with server-side support, you could write something that will do this switching for you. But we need a page that's going to load the production version. So instead of kind of doing it here in our development version, I'm going to create a separate production page, which is going to be called index.html. Index.html is going to look just like our development page, except there's two changes. The first is going to load the production minified version of Steel. And the second thing is we need to tell what is our main entry point here, because with Steel production, it's not by default going to load package.json, because it'd have to load package.json to know what your main entry point is, and that would be a lot of serial requests, which would be not so good. Maybe we should make that work, Matthew, actually, and then warn people about it. But
maybe.
Yeah, people were a little confused during the training. Even though they saw me do it, they just were like, why isn't it loading? And I was like, oh, you forgot your main. So here I'm providing the main module, the main entry point to load. And now if I load index.html, you can see here it loads, the HTML loads, then Steel loads, and then it's your minified JavaScript and minified CSS. So now this is a pretty good build, but look what happens. There's this subtle problem, which let's say your page had some HTML before the JavaScript was loading. You're showing your users something. So I'm going to have an H1 and it's be like already in page HTML. Now, hopefully you can see this. You can see there's a little flash of unstyled content as that black turns into blue. That's not so good. There's another problem we're going to address in a moment that Steel production itself has to load before these can load, but I want to address this flash of unstyled content first. So
this is fixed in the 1.0 Steel, maybe. We fixed that unstyling content with loading CSS files by adding a promise to loading CSS and wait until the CSS is loaded.
That's a different problem that you're talking about,
yeah.
Julian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a different problem. This is because, yeah, this no matter what, even if yeah, that problem is fixed, but this problem would still exist. What I want to do is make it so that I can put in a link tag to the production style sheet up here in the head, so that before any JavaScript even loads, and before the page is shown, the CSS is going to be shown. Now, this is what I did, Matthew, is it seemed like it was working when I made this change, which is what blew my mind, because there was no additional request. So I thought that this was already working. We should definitely have this working for 1.0. I don't really see a reason why it can't, because it just would be so much easier than writing what you have to write right now, which is what I'm about to write. So this presumably, but why does the network not show a request? That's what's so confusing to me.
Yeah, try it in Firefox. Did you ever try that? I wonder if it's a Chrome specific thing, or.
So what you're trying to say is that we are loading the CSS file in the link tag, and normally Steel also should load the CSS file, including and require it. Okay. So but Steel is not looking into the head and looking for CSS.
Steel doesn't know that the link tag has already been added.
Are you sure? Are you sure, Matthew? Because now
I can
this
look
is
at the
also
code.
saying,
I don't.
Yeah. It's okay. So anybody who's watching this, it's possible that somehow maybe Manuel inserted this and none of us know about it, or someone did this and we just totally forgot. But historically, the way to prevent this, even if you added this, Steel would try to double load the CSS, and you need to tell Steel, hey, this CSS module has already been instantiated. And the way to do that is with this. You have a Steel. This is also another way you can configure Steel. You could put in the map and meta configs in here too, if you wanted.
See if you have two link tags. If you don't mind.
Oh, you think it might just not be.
Yeah, maybe there's not. See if there should definitely be two link tags. I just looked at the code.
There's two link tags. Okay. It's the browsers are smart enough.
Maybe that's a new thing. The browsers. It's interesting.
Yay, browsers. Interesting. Okay. So we don't. Okay, that's a good way of showing that it's broken. Okay, we don't want this extra link tag to be inserted into the page, even if now some browsers are obviously smart enough to see that it's a duplicate.
But it is applying the styles twice. If you noticed in your dev tools, that it is.
Yeah, it's being done. It's not making the request type.
Probably cause problems, I would think.
Okay. So, and I wonder, because we made this promise-based and not link-based, right, in production. Isn't that what Julian was just talking about? Is this going to then it's going to go back to breaking, potentially, because it's making an AJAX request and starting a style tag instead of a link tag?
No, it's not. That's not what it's doing. What he's working on is making it so that it's done before the JavaScript executes.
No, I know. That's what I mean. But let's talk about that later.
Right.
Anyways, you don't want that. You put in this script tag. Hopefully, I think this is going to be a future improvement that we should add, because it's doable. But right now, you need to say, hey, don't actually. I put this in the page. Don't actually try to instantiate and load this module, because I've already done it. So with that. And if you refresh, now there's only that one link tag. Our network still looks really nice. It's loading the CSS first, then Steel, then the code that Steel loads. And that's one final thing that we could avoid, is instead of loading Steel and then having Steel load my hub, well, it'd be better just to put a script tag for my hub in the page. So that's the next. That's another option to Steel's build system. So I can run, just like I ran node modules bin steel tools, there's an option to say, hey, bundle steel in with your production JavaScript output. So bundle steel. You'll actually be able to see a little bit different. This shows you what's in every bundle, right? So this MyHub has these. MyHub CSS has these modules, which is a nice way of sanity checking what's in what. And then you'll see here now that MyHub also has steel in it and some other things to add that steel needs. So once we've done that, we need to leave in the instantiated, but we can get rid of loading steel and instead just point at the JavaScript file directly here. Now let's look at our network. So here, now we've gotten rid of the flash unstyled content. We've dropped the number of requests down. So our load time is probably like tons faster, 20, 30 milliseconds faster. So this is really good, except now we're loading the puppies code and the repos code even though we're not using it. And while that's probably not too big of a deal because this is kind of a small app, in big apps where when you go from one page to another page where there's just going to be a ton of code, you waste the user's time by downloading it for your home page or for your login or registration page. That's not a good idea. So we're going to switch this to being progressively loaded, and then we're going to conclude. So what I'm going to do is change my hub here to be progressively loaded. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to make this update page. I'm going to get rid of this modules. And I'm going to get rid of the imports because we're going to dynamically, progressively, we're going to import that when we need them. I'm going to make that happen in the update page here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just I'm going to copy and paste this. First thing I'm going to do is if there's no hash, then I'm just going to update main to say welcome home. But if there is a hash, that means we need to import either the puppies or the repos code. So I'm going to write a system.import, and this is how you programmatically import modules. So I'm going to load from my hub, and I'm going to the hash is either going to be puppies or repos. So I'm going to say hash plus hash. So this will be myhub/puppy/puppies.
Should we call system.import, or should we call steel.import, or maybe better import steel loader and import that with loader import?
System.import. I think you need in most apps you don't need the kind of fancier which system is the system like you do because we're going to define which bundles we're importing.
Yeah, but future-proof, maybe it's confusing for people that we using system for our module loader. Maybe we can force that users should use steel.import. It's a global steel variable in the window object, so you can use that.
Let's talk about that at the end then. Let's get through the training. So definitely use system.import because that's what works right now. Unless you're in, use system.import. Anyways, so this is what system.import does is it provides it's going to provide one of two different things. So if it's a if you're importing a common JS module, you'll get the actual plugin code. So puppies is a common JS, so you would actually get the puppies method here. But if you're importing ES modules, well, then you get the actual module object, and you have to get the default. So because we're doing different types of modules, typically most projects don't have this problem where they got to figure out which is which. But because we're doing two different kinds, this could be a module or a plugin. And then what we need to do is kind of feature detect which it is. So the way that I did this is, what I did is I want to get the plugin out. So if this is a function, well, then we know it's the plugin. So then I'm just going to make plugin the module or plugin. Or if it's a module, that means that if it's not, that means it's a module, so get the default export. And then I'm just going to call, once I have finally the plugin from the module, I'm going to call that plugin on the main element. So with this, if we go back to our development, go back, because I created an index page, my hub. There you go. Go back to our development mode. You'll notice when I click on Repos, it's going to load the Repos code. And then if I click on Puppies, it's going to load Puppies and Justified Gallery. And then if I go back, well, it's just making the request, but it's loading no code because the code has already been loaded. So now we want to build this. In order to build this, we need to tell Steal's build which modules are going to be progressively loaded. You do that with configuration in the system object here. You do this in a bundle config. So you're saying, hey, also bundle, because you're going to progressively load, the my hub puppies module and the my hub repos module. And once we have that, we can just rerun. Steal's build, and you'll see there, it's going to open. It says like opening, kind of like which modules it's opening. You're going to see it open 3 things now. It's going to open the main module, but it's also going to start investigating. We might change it from open to something else, but it's going to start like scanning what repos loads and puppies loads, and then it's going to build a bundle for each one of those. So that's why there's my hub puppies now with what's in puppies, and there's my hub repos with what's in repos. So finally, if we go back to the index page here, it's loading. Now, this is probably, I wish I had recorded it. It's a little bit, I assume it's got to be a little bit smaller amount of kilobytes it's transferring, because especially when we go to puppies, it's going to load that 18 kilobytes needed and 1.7 kilobytes needed for the CSS and JavaScript to power this puppies page. So that's it. That is how to make a progressively loaded, high-performance JavaScript application from scratch with StealJS. Do we get a slow clap going?
Yeah.
Cool.
This deserves
awesome.
a real clap.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, slow claps build, right? I meant one of those.
We have been going
Cool.
for an hour and a half, so maybe we don't have time
Yeah.
for the building.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully that gives you, I mean, if you could follow that modlet pattern and, you know, configure your bundles in that way and figure out the system import, how it progressively loads, like it can make a real big impact in page load times, depending on the scale of your application. So there's a whole lot more stuff to learn at Steel, and if you come to the StealJS training, you feel like you've watched this, and still come to StealJS training because we go into a lot of depth on all of this. So thank you. Thanks to Matthew and Julian.